I still remember the taste of stale tea and shame. At the yearly Lancaster family brunch in Savannah, one of those stiff Southern rituals where pearls were worn like armor and judgment was passed with a smile, my father looked at me and said, "You should be ashamed. Don't call that a career. It's dirty." The table went silent. "And if you can't do something respectable with your life," he continued, "then get out of my home." I glanced around, hoping anyone would speak up. My stepmother sipped her mimosa. My half-brother Jeremy looked away. No one stopped me as I stood, grabbed my weather-worn camera bag, and walked out of the house I'd lived in for 21 years. That was 7 months ago. Yesterday my phone rang. It was my father, not to insult me this time, but to ask for $120,000. 0 cents. To help bail Jeremy out of a lawsuit. I'd always been the kid with messy hair and mud on my jeans clutching a hand-me-down Nikon. While Jeremy gave speeches at debate tournaments, I crouched near creeks, catching snapshots of frogs and birds in flight. I didn't dream of hedge funds or Ivy League MBAs. I dreamed of rainforests and raw truth, of capturing stories without speaking them. At 17, I sold a photo to National Geographic Kids for $300. 0 cents. I was ecstatic. Dad just said, "Don't let it go to your head." Still, I pushed forward. I got into UCLA's documentary photography program with partial funding. When I asked him for help with rent, he sneered. "You chose the mud. Live in it." So I left at 20, moved into a windowless apartment in Koreatown, worked nights at a diner, and interned for a local wildlife magazine by day. It was grueling, but I made it. For years I skipped holidays. When I did visit, I hid my gear and spoke little. My stepmother said, "Let's not upset your father." Jeremy smirked once and said, "Still chasing bugs, Casey?" I thought if I stayed quiet they'd understand. They never did until they needed a check. The apartment wasn't much, just one narrow window, cracked walls, and enough space for a mattress, a desk, and a second-hand tripod. But it was mine. It smelled faintly of eucalyptus and dog shampoo, a blend from the rescue center where I volunteered every weekend. That's where I caught my first real break. One Sunday, I was photographing a retriever curled around a newborn tabby. Dr. Ellen, one of the senior vets, asked if she could use the shots for their adoption site. The shelter posted them. By Thursday, I had 5 emails, 3 from local pet brands, 2 from grooming startups. No one offered money at first, but they offered trust, and that was enough to begin. I started with product photos for small businesses, then blog features. Eventually, I got invites to ecotourism lodges and wildlife sanctuaries. I didn't have an agent. I had a steady eye, quick replies, and kind people who passed my name along. Soon after, I launched a YouTube channel, Casey in the Wild. Just tutorials, field clips, camera tips, sometimes funny, always messy. It felt like me. 6 months in, a clip of me freeing a deer tangled in fencing went viral. National outlets picked it up. Wildlife publications reached out. Sponsors followed. My subscriber count crossed 500,000. Then, 1,000,000. I kept it small. Same mattress, same ancient coffee maker. But I finally had steady income. I opened a summer photo workshop in Vermont. It sold out within 48 hours. I hired 2 assistants. We built something real. But I said nothing to my family. That Thanksgiving, Jeremy bragged about his new law firm. Dad beamed. I didn't mention my National Geographic spread or the book deal I'd just signed. I just passed the stuffing and smiled. That night, staring at the ceiling, I thought, you could win a Pulitzer, and they'd still call it a phase. I nearly sent Dad the article. I didn't. I had learned that silence was safer. Until the text came. Family meeting this Sunday. Everyone's expected. Big announcement. I brought a framed photo. Lioness Midleap, Tanzania. I hoped it might open a new door. I was wrong. The house looked exactly the same. Manicured hedges, white columns, and that sterile stillness that passed for elegance. Jeremy was already there, drink in hand, nails manicured to perfection, lounging like he'd never questioned his place at the center of it all. He wore entitlement like cologne, sharp, expensive, and suffocating. Dad stood near the fireplace, swirling a glass of bourbon like he was back in a boardroom. Mom hovered over the charcuterie board, adjusting the figs like each one might shatter the evening if placed wrong. I felt like a stranger in the place I'd once built blanket forts in. Then it began. "Everyone, let's gather in the living room," Dad said, voice loud, controlled. I sat on the edge of the couch, the photo I brought still wrapped in brown paper across my knees. Jeremy looked smug. Mom was misty-eyed already, and I didn't yet know why. Dad cleared his throat and smiled. "We're thrilled to announce that Jeremy will be launching his own real estate venture." A pause for effect. "To support this, we'll be transferring a sizable amount from the family trust into his new company." Applause followed. Mine never came. I raised a hand, tentative. Dad's eyes flicked to me. "Yes, Casey? Does that include any support for me?" I asked, quiet but clear. The smile dropped. "You," he scoffed. "You chose mud, bugs, and barking strays. That's not a business. It's a hobby at best, filthy at worst." Silence followed. He stood taller, like delivering a final verdict. "I've said it before, if you want to crawl in the dirt with a camera, don't expect this family to fund it." I looked down, unwrapped the photo. "This is being featured in next month's National Geographic," I said, holding it out. "I thought maybe you'd want it for your office." He didn't even glance at it. "Take that out of my house," he said, "and pack your things. You're done here." "Are you serious?" Then no one spoke. Jeremy sipped his drink. I didn't cry. I stood, went upstairs, packed what was mine. Before leaving, I placed the lioness photo on the entry table and walked out. Again, but this time, it was final. If you've ever walked out of a room knowing your worth and still not being seen, hit subscribe. The next chapter isn't about proving them wrong. It's about what came after I finally chose myself. I sat by the frosted window, knees pulled tight to my chest, forehead resting against the glass. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it hurt in a way that defied tears. It was the kind of ache that felt like confirmation, like something you've long suspected but prayed was wrong. When I got back to my apartment, I dropped my coat, stepped out of my boots, and went straight to the darkroom. Lights off, red bulb on. Silence. The tiny space smelled like developer fluid and old paper. Comforting, grounding. I printed a shot I'd been avoiding for weeks, a barred owl in mid-flight, wings crisp against a blur of Vermont forest. As it dried on the line, the truth settled in, quiet, undeniable, and the next morning I was back in the woods by 6. My fall workshop was in full swing. 6 students bundled in flannel and puffers, crunching through dew-laced leaves to chase golden light. We sipped thermoses of coffee, waited for birds that never showed, and laughed when our boots sank into muck. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It was mine. Nights were for editing, uploading tutorials, responding to comments. I answered sponsorship offers with a professionalism my old professors would have admired. One camera brand even pitched a signature gear line. I never told my family. No texts, no voicemails, not even one of Mom's passive-aggressive check-ins. I slept better. One evening, I stood at the window, sipping red wine as the first snow blanketed the backyard. I whispered to the dark, "This peace. It's expensive, but worth every cent." That winter, Untamed Light crossed 1 million subscribers. I didn't throw a party, but I did order chocolate ganache cake, ate it alone, smiled between bites. For once, I didn't wait for applause. Then came Tuesday. I'd just finished filming a segment on animal tracking, cider warming on the stove, when my phone buzzed. The name hit like ice water. I stared, let it ring. Then I picked up. "Casey," he said. No greeting. Voice thin, almost strained. "Yes." A pause. Just breath. "It's your brother, Jeremy," he said. "He's in serious trouble. We need your help." Of course he got into real estate, Dad muttered. "Commercial flips. His partner bailed, and now he's stuck with 3 properties, 2 lawsuits, and a balloon loan coming due. End of the month. $120,000, 0 cents. The silence between us stretched like a frozen lake, thin and cracking. He's going to lose everything, Dad added, and the Lancaster name, our reputation. I let the words sit. Finally, I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" He exhaled, measured like he'd practiced the answer. "Because you're doing well. I saw the videos, the studio, the channel. You've built something." He hesitated. "We're proud." I laughed, not kindly. "You called my work filthy and kicked me out. That was 7 months ago." He went quiet again. "And now I'm a daughter again? Because you need something?" "Don't be like this, Casey," he snapped, his control slipping. "Jeremy's your brother." "And I'm your daughter," I said evenly. "But that didn't matter when you humiliated me in front of everyone. When you told me to leave with nothing. This isn't the time to relive the past," he said, voice low. "No," I replied, "it's time you live with it." "She's your blood," he tried again. "So am I." Then he said the line that sealed it. "You're really going to let your own brother drown just because your feelings got hurt?" I almost smiled. "No, I'm gonna let him drown because he's in a boat you built, and you were both happy to leave me on the shore." "Casey." I cut him off. "You made it clear I'm not part of this family, so don't call me to save it." Then I hung up and turned off my phone. This time, the silence felt like release, not rejection. It was still dark when the knock came. Sharp. Repeated. Way too early. I glanced at the clock. 6:47 a.m. No one came to the studio this early, not even UPS. I peeled back the curtain. 3 figures on the porch. Dad, Mom, Jeremy. Another knock, softer, almost unsure. I opened the door a sliver, blocking the frame with my body. "Why are you here?" Jeremy stepped forward, voice hollow. "Casey, please, just hear us out." Jeremy's eyes were red-rimmed, and he clutched his leather portfolio like it was the last thing keeping him from falling apart. Behind him, Dad stood stiff, hands clasped behind his back like he was bracing for a verdict. Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't move. "We're desperate," Mom said, her voice cracking. "Your brother is facing lawsuits. The banks want their money. If we don't pay by the end of the month, we'll lose everything," I finished. Jeremy wiped his nose with the back of his sleeve. "I messed up, okay? I know that. I didn't think it would fall apart this fast. I thought I could handle it." I raised an eyebrow, like you thought you could handle mocking me for 10 years at every Thanksgiving? He flinched. "I didn't mean." "But you did," I cut in. "Every smirk, every time you called my work cute or a phase, you meant it. And now you need me?" Dad finally spoke. "Casey, enough. This isn't about old wounds. It's about family. You don't abandon blood." I stared at him. "You did?" His jaw tightened. "You left me to be humiliated in front of everyone," I said quietly. "You kicked me out for choosing something you didn't understand. And now you're here because the Golden Sun tanked?" "I'm still your brother," Jeremy said, his voice thin. "And I'm sorry." The words hung in the cold air between us. For a moment, I almost softened. But then I remembered standing in that living room, holding out a framed photo that Dad refused to touch. I remembered Jeremy sipping bourbon, smiling, while I was told to leave. "I forgave you," I said, "a long time ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean rescue." Jeremy's voice cracked. "You have the money. This wouldn't even dent your earnings." "Exactly," I replied. "Because to you, I'm not family, I'm a bailout." "No," Mom whispered. "You're our daughter." "Only when it's convenient," I said, stepping back. They stood in the cold, soaked in desperation. "I wish things were different," I said softly, "but they're not." Then, calmly and clearly, I said, "If you're looking for a savior, try the child you chose." And I closed the door. I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I filled the kettle, poured chamomile tea, then stood by the window, watching their car disappear down the snowy road. There was no triumph, no bitterness, just quiet, and for the first time, that quiet felt like power. 3 days passed. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd understood that no meant no. Then my inbox exploded. Subject lines hit like punches. Why would you abandon your family? You're heartless. Your brother deserves better. Shaken, I read the flood of angry emails, DMs, and comments. On my studio's Instagram, dozens of comments piled under a photo of a rescued fox. Hope the fox knows you're soulless. You profit off animals but ignore your own blood. Fake nature, girl. Confused, I opened a message from a former workshop student. Attached was a screenshot. Jeremy's post. Public, tagged, viral, on Facebook, LinkedIn, even Reddit. The caption read like a slow-burning dagger. It's heartbreaking, but we're out of options. My sister, Casey Lancaster, a successful content creator, refused to help when our family was drowning. She has the means, we begged. She shut the door. I still love her, but I don't know who she is anymore. I stared at the words, breath caught between disbelief and something sharper. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated rewrite. I was no longer the daughter they disowned. Now I was the villain, and the internet ate it up. Sponsors dropped me, a camera brand paused our collaboration, 3 clients canceled winter sessions. My assistant Mia looked over. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't. That night I met Raj, my lawyer, at a quiet cafe. He scrolled through screenshots, headlines, account losses. After a pause, he looked up. Casey, this is defamation, measurable damage, emotional distress, business loss. I pressed my palms to the table. He's my brother. Raj leaned in. He made this public. That wasn't family, that was a smear campaign. She was, Raj said, until she made you a target to save herself. I looked away. Outside, snow drifted quietly down. I remembered Jeremy's smirk that day I was thrown out, his dry eyes when he came begging. And now this. He wanted me to pay, one way or another. I met Raj's gaze. Draft the lawsuit. He just nodded. We'll file Monday. The hearing came 6 weeks later. Court wasn't like the movies, just beige walls, murmured voices, and lights that drained everyone's face. Jeremy sat across from me in a sharp suit, gaze pinned to the table. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. Raj walked the judge through everything: screenshots, analytics, contracts, cancellations. The evidence spoke for itself. Jeremy's defense? Emotional transparency. But the court didn't buy it, because intent doesn't outweigh impact, and mine was clear. The ruling was crisp: $147,000, 0 cents in damages. A formal public retraction. No pity plays. He didn't cry, neither did I. Outside the courthouse, Raj asked if I wanted to issue a statement. I shook my head. Let silence speak louder. That night, I walked the trail behind my studio. Alone. Just snow underfoot. My breath in the air. There was no vindication. Only stillness. The next morning, I received a letter, handwritten, from Mom. I wish it hadn't come to this. I don't know how to fix it, but I know now, it's not yours to fix. I read it twice, then placed it in a drawer. Not out of anger, but out of peace. If this story hit something in you, if you've ever had to walk away from the people who raised you just to protect your peace, leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done. I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking for honesty. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say, enough. And if no one's told you lately, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Subscribe if you understand.